What's up, YouTube dads? Listen, I just got done coming back from the hospital, helping my wife with our second child being born right in the middle of COVID-19. My wife chose to give a natural birth, and I learned a lot of lessons. I want to make this video for you to help you know as a dad what you can do to help your wife go through this thing that is the most intense thing she'll do with her entire life, especially right now during COVID-19 and all the extra rules and situations that are going on at the hospital. All right, so my daughter was born May 13th of 2020, and it's right in the middle of the coronavirus epidemic. Everybody's shelter in place, stay at home, all the different places like hospitals, everywhere you go, they have procedures to deal with this. I'm gonna cover some of that, and then what I really wanna dial in on for this video is what you as the dad can do to be a coach to your wife as she is going through this really intense process. This is our second child being born, and to prepare for our first child being born, my wife and I, we chose to do a Bradley coaching class. Bradley coaching class, if you haven't heard about it, if your wife hasn't told you about it yet, it's for the natural birthing process, and it's supposed to be husband coached. And it was great for me, right? I really like that class. I don't know if you can take it right now. Right now, it's in the middle of COVID. I don't know that anyone's gonna be offering a Bradley class, but if you can take one, or you can maybe watch some online courses on how to do it, I highly recommend it, okay? It was great. As a dad, it helped me know what to expect, because otherwise I'm kind of clueless. I'm focused on, at that time, that was back 2014, I was really focused on getting a business started. I was focused on other things, right? And so when my wife took the initiative to research what she wanted, the kind of birth she wanted to have, she chose to have a natural birth. That's her decision, and I'm gonna respect her decision. And she chose to go and take a Bradley class. We did that together, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic for her. It was fantastic for me. I knew what to do. I got clear instruction on how I can help my wife go through this process. Now, fast forward, this is 2020, this is our second child, and I don't exactly remember everything I learned from the Bradley class, but I did have a lot of comfort in terms of knowing I'm the coach. I'm gonna be the helper. Your wife has some options. She can potentially have a doula. Historically, you would bring a doula. A doula is basically a person who professionally assists the woman as she's going through the labor process. And doulas can be really expensive. We live in the Bay Area. A doula is $1,400. Now, I don't know about your family, but my family, we can't afford that. So I'm the doula, right? I'm the dad. Like, I mean, $1,400, like, tell me what I need to do, I'm gonna do it, right? Like, that's a lot of money. Now, doulas do a really important job, and if you choose to get a doula, you made a good choice. So hopefully you find a really great doula if that's the case. But listen, right now, it's in the middle of COVID-19, and the procedure at our hospital is only one person can be with the woman giving labor, and in our case, it's me, the dad. Okay, so I have to be the coach, I have to be the advocate, I have to be the helper, the comforter, I have to be so many things for my wife during this really epic time. And because she's choosing to give a natural birth, that's intense. And so I have to be her ears, I have to be her eyes, I have to be the one, a lot of times, interacting with the staff. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about our first birth, because that was my learning experience going into this one. It went pretty smooth. My wife chose to go with a midwife, and so she went into labor starting that morning. We went to the midwife's basically house. She had a section of her house dedicated for this, and she gave birth within 4 hours for our son. It was amazing, and my wife is superwoman, all right? Natural birth is not easy. There was nada interventions, nothing. And so my role, there was just my wife, obviously, me, the midwife, and then one assistant for the midwife. And as the birthing process is happening and she's pushing, like, I've got her right leg up on my shoulder, midwife's got her leg up on her shoulder, and I'm there, and I'm gonna be the one to catch this baby, right? And I see that the midwife and her assistant have gloves, and I'm like, should I be wearing gloves? And she's like, oh no, honey, like, y'all have the same terms, it's okay. And I'm like, all right. And so then, you know, this baby is starting to come out, and something is coming out, and the midwife is like, oh, you're doing great, honey. Like, I see his head, he's coming out. And I'm looking at that going like, that doesn't look like a head to me. That looks like intestines, and I'm not sure you should push that out. It was his head, but like I want you dads to know, like when that baby starts to first come out, it does not look natural. Okay, at first you're like, what is that? Don't say anything, all right? Just stay silent on that part, all right? But sure enough, she pushes a little more, and yeah, it's a little person. And so finally he comes out, and like I'm trying to catch him, and man, these kids are slippery when they come out. Okay, I was kind of wishing I had those gloves, because like I'm not supposed to drop these, right? And then the other thing is I'm holding him. You wanna put him or her up onto mommy's chest, right? Get that skin to skin. But remember, there's still an umbilical cord attached, so that baby may not be able to go all the way up to her breast. So he might have to just, be on her tummy for a little while. And they don't want to disconnect that umbilical cord right away. There's a little bit you want to give a few minutes for that transition to happen. All right, fast forward, 2020. Now we're going to give birth to our daughter. And this labor process was a little bit different. Our daughter Brielle, she was late by about a week. And so we scheduled an inducement. My wife still wanted to give a natural birth, and I'm there to respect her process and her decision. And this is what's different. So what's different with COVID is in front of the hospital, they have what looks like triage tents, and they've got the generators running with the giant floodlights. Honestly, this reminds me of my deployments. I almost felt at home. It was weird. I was like, hey, I'm back in Afghanistan. And like you have to enter through this triage point, and there's someone there, they're checking you in. This was what's different is they only tested Megan. They didn't test me, but I didn't get to stay. So she went through this process of testing. It took 2 hours. It's also very uncomfortable. They stick like giant swabs up your nose. It's really uncomfortable, she told me. And that process was about 2 hours until they got the results back, which was negative. She didn't have COVID. So then it was about 2 hours later that she called me up or sent me a text like, okay, you can come to the hospital now. And so I came to the hospital. I asked her, hey, do you want me to bring anything? And she didn't reply. Well, it turns out she was with a doctor and she really couldn't have replied. I forgot to bring her yoga ball, which she really wanted. Bring whatever your wife wants. I was a little concerned about like people giving me weird looks or having a problem. Like, are they gonna say you can't bring that ball in here? And honestly, no one said anything to me at all. I even brought like a tripod and some other things. Like I brought like a lot, and no one even gave me a second look. So if your wife wants you to bring something, especially if she's getting a natural birth, just bring whatever it is she's asking for. I don't think the hospital staff are gonna say anything. And even if they did, so what? Just try and bring it anyway. But I kind of forgot it. And so I get there. I go to the door where they're at, knock on the door, and as soon as I walk in, it was like an awkward moment because they were actually starting the induction. I want to talk to you a little bit about what is an induction, what's the process, what are some things they do. An induction is something they do if they still want to give a natural or at least a vaginal birth and not a C-section, but maybe the baby's late or some other reasons. So there's a few processes they have that are relatively natural or simulating natural that can help get things started. And one of them is basically they put a balloon, a tiny balloon into the cervix. You can imagine this is probably pretty uncomfortable. And it just expands the cervix a little bit and tells the cervix, hey, it's time to get this thing started. And that was the process they were doing as I was walking in. Now we went overnight, not a lot of activity. This is the thing I want you guys to be aware of, like as the dad, as the coach. This is really important. You need to know what's going on. You need to be aware. All right, there's gonna be things that she's hooked up to. She's gonna have an IV. They started to give her a Pitocin drip, and I'll explain that in a second. And they have monitors. The monitors are gonna detect contractions, and they're gonna detect baby's heart rate. Baby's heart rate is the absolute most critical thing there is in this entire process, and that is the thing the staff is going to be paying the most attention to, baby's heart rate. And you should be aware of that too, and you should know. All right, so she starts the labor process, and I'm taking it all in. We're in our room. I'm watching the monitors, not out of nervousness, but I'm learning, right? Like I didn't get this video. No one explained this to me. And the first birth was at a midwife, so we didn't have all these extra monitors. And so I'm trying to figure this out so I can be the best coach possible. And I'm looking at the monitors, I'm like, okay, this one detects contractions, which is great because now I can see when my wife is experiencing a contraction, and I can comfort her the way she likes to be comforted during that moment. And then I can also see, and this is the most critical thing, I can see how the baby's heart rate is responding, because this is something I want you to be aware of. They're gonna have her try different positions, laying on her side or on her back in different places, and there's a lot of things you can do. But if she's in a position where potentially that's not good for the baby, what'll happen is as she contracts, that might restrict blood flow to the baby, which will reduce the baby's heart rate. And that's the thing that's the most critical that the staff is going to be watching, and that you, the dad, need to be watching as well and be aware of. And this happened really early on when she first went on to Pitocin. First, let's talk about what Pitocin is. Pitocin is a simulated oxytocin, and its job is to help with the contraction process. And it's going to hopefully increase the frequency of contractions and also increase the intensity a little bit. And this is to get things going. And they will also use Pitocin after she's given birth, because that just helps with some other processes after having given birth. It's important for you to know how much Pitocin they're giving. Like, you don't know how much is the right amount, just know how much they're giving, and I'll explain why you want to know. They started her on Pitocin, and they had her try another position at some point. And I wasn't paying super close attention because, this is hours and hours and hours, and I'm tired. But suddenly, this is like every staff member in the hospital, like 3 doctors, 5 nurses, they're just in the room, right? What happened? It turns out that during a contraction or 2 contractions, baby's heart rate went down. And it was low for like a minute, 2 minute, 3 minute. And so this is very concerning for the staff. This is the time where they're approaching a window where they're gonna decide to do an emergency C-section. And now my wife is still calm, and I'm still calm. The staff is phenomenal. They know what to do. They're gonna do their job. And so my job there is to comfort my wife, but also listen to everything the staff is saying, so that I'm taking it all in and understanding what's going on, so that I can be the best coach possible for my wife. And eventually, the baby stabilized, heart rate stabilized. We realized, okay, this position is not really working for baby. It's probably the baby's not putting pressure on the umbilical cord, so we need to try something different. And everything calmed down. The doctors left. We were back to just our 2 main nurses, and kind of settled down. But I decided I need to pay even more attention. At that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm here for my wife, and I'm her advocate. In a sense, you almost think of it like this. The staff is mostly there for baby, right? The baby is the most vulnerable person and the most one in need of help. And so it's good that the staff is super lightning focused on the baby, but to a degree, they're not paying as much attention to mom. They are, but not as much. And so you, dad, your job is to focus on mom, right? And trusting that the staff knows what they're doing. Now we had this labor went on for a while, and we shifted to the morning shift. And as labor was progressing, at one point the nurse wanted to check my wife's dilation level, and they have to check. When your wife is going through this labor, like, she's not going to hear everything they're saying. It's not going to, not everything is going to reach her. Like, think about all the times you're distracted and you're doing something, and then someone tries to come and talk to you. Like, you heard them talk, but you didn't really hear them. And that's what she's going through in her labor process. So while the nurse did say, this is what I'm going to do, and asked for permission, she also just kind of dove in there and did it. My wife has a tremendous pain tolerance, and I'm really in tune with her. And so when this nurse just kind of dove in there to check Megan's dilation process, like I could see Megan was in utter extreme pain, more pain than I'd seen on her face during any of the other labor process. And so this nurse was just not gentle, and her timing was not good. And she just had this rush about her. And shortly before she did that, she even made the comment like, hey, I get off at 3 and I want this baby to be out before 3. And she's saying it like in a positive way, but at the same time, you could tell she had a little bit of a sense of kind of like trying to rush things along. And that's when I really was like, I need to be just advocating for my wife. And so at that point, I was kind of letting the nurse know like, hey, that was too much for her. That was too much for her. And she's going to need some space. And it was a little awkward with that nurse and the other nurse who were there. And they're kind of looking at me awkwardly. And I'm just kind of giving them a stern face like, I told them plainly, like, Megan's going to need a little bit of time. And so they figured it out. And they actually they exited the room. And that really threw off my wife. It was so painful for her. And she kind of had this good rhythm going. She'd done hypno babies in the past. And so that really threw her off. And so that was the time I had to step up as a dad and as a husband and protect my wife in a sense, like make my wife the focus for a moment. And so we had some moments together where, I let her talk to me and tell me how painful that was. And at that moment, I'm just, yeah, babe, that looked so painful. I'm sorry, babe. She should have been more patient. She should have been more gentle. And helping my wife get back onto track. And at that point, I did advise my wife, like I knew she didn't want an epidural, and I'm not going to advise her to do an epidural, but they do have other pain medications they can offer in terms of it's just like a, like an ibuprofen type medication, but via the IV. And so that at that point I was advising her, babe, I think you should take this pain medication. It's not an epidural. It's just going to be intravenous. And so at that point, she allowed a little bit of pain medication because that really threw her off. That nurse was just not gentle. And the next people that came in was the actual doctors. And 2 of the doctors were female, and that just really helped. And I was able to kind of communicate with one of the female doctors like, hey, that was really rough, and that threw her off. And I was able to communicate with the doctors clearly like, okay, yes, Megan would like to have a little bit of pain medication, this type. And so the doctors are saying things to Megan, but she's not really hearing everything. And I can tell, like she's answering them, but she's not really with it because she's going through labor. So I have to be that person who knows what she's really thinking, what she wants ahead of time, and also listening to everything the doctors are saying, watching all the monitors, tracking the situation, and being that advocate for my wife. And that's your job as the husband. You're the advocate. You're the dad. You need to help out your wife during this situation. You can't check out. You can't just go relax. You can't be like, I don't know what's going on, or be stressed out. No way. You have a job to do. And so at this point, I communicate to the doctors like, all right, this is where she's at. That threw her off. She needs a little bit of time. Now, the doctors were really compassionate. Both of them, they're moms, so they know. They've been through it. It was a little bit different after that, but the staff, for the most part, was really good. And I could tell, like, when the nurse did come back, she kind of felt a little bad about that, and she was not ever the person to check again the dilation levels. All right, so after that, the only person checking dilation levels was the senior doctor, who was clearly a little bit older. Really experienced. She's a mom. She gets it. And she did a really excellent job of communicating to Megan when she's going to check and how she's going to check. Some of the other questions we had going into the hospital due to COVID, like, do we need to wear a mask? The answer is yes. They're going to ask you to wear a mask. And so I didn't always remember to put my mask on. And when the staff wasn't in the room, I would have my mask off. But I did try to keep my mask on. once Megan really got into labor, they did not expect her to keep the mask on, but she did start the labor process with the mask, and probably generally they're going to encourage the mask. Now, your job as dad also is to be the videographer, photographer. Now, they had a sign up on the wall that said, no pictures, no taking videos. And I was a little intimidated by that. Like, I mean, I want to follow their procedures, but I also want to record this really special event, especially for my wife, because the way she experiences it is different than anyone else, obviously. But I want her to have something that she can go back and watch and reflect on and see it from a perspective when she's not experiencing pain. And so I wanted to respect the rules, but at the same time, like, I'm just gonna break these rules. Contractions increase, the pain increases, your wife has to be super dialed in focused. Now, what you have to do right then is to help her through the breathing process, and you have to bring your confident yet calm voice. And so when you're helping her through those 10-second long breaths, so contractions typically last around 30 seconds to a minute, ballpark 30 seconds. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna help her breathe for 10-second intervals. She takes a breath, help her for another 10 seconds. She takes a breath, help her for another 10 seconds. And for those 10 seconds, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, calm, peaceful, but still like enough that she can hear you through all the pain that's happening. I'm watching my wife, and she's just red, right? Because it's so much pain, and she's effectively also holding her breath, right? During this push, right? She's not breathing. And you've got to be just dialed in with your wife, okay? You're watching her, but you're also listening at the same time to everything the staff is saying and doing, everything that's going on. As it's getting close for what I did, again, like during this time, I ended up holding a leg again, which this time I didn't want to hold the legs. I wanted to be the videographer. I wanted to get this on film. But nonetheless, I find myself holding a leg, and the baby is coming out, and this is obviously the hardest part for your wife. It's the most painful thing. They call it the ring of fire. You can imagine why they would call it that. And as the baby's head is crowning, now there's something that can happen here. The staff and anyone who helps the labor process is going to tell you this is when you need to slow down. And she told Megan ahead of time, the doctor, like, okay, there's going to be a time when we're going to go from 10 seconds to just 3 seconds counting. And I'm listening, I'm paying attention. I'm like, okay. And when that time came, and it's right about after basically the ring of fire time, when the head is starting to crown, the baby's head is crowning, it's time for mom to actually slow down with the pushes, not pushing too much, because what can happen is she can tear. Because if you go too hard, too fast at this point, it can actually damage more of her body. And so at this point, Dad, you want to help. You got to know when that transition is happening based on listening to the doctors, and you need to help your wife slow down. Now, in both circumstances, my wife had this mindset of like, let's get this done. Like, let's just get this baby out. And who can blame her with everything she's going through this natural birth process? So I tried, the doctors tried to coach her to slow down a little bit. I'm only counting to 3. We're letting her know, slow down, slow down, slow down. She's not hearing it, right? She is in the zone. And so again, second baby, she pushed this thing out as hard as she could at that last minute. So, you know, if you're a mom and you're watching, or you're a future mom, you're about to go into labor, try to listen to your coaches at that point. It's the hardest thing you can do, but they're going to advise you to slow down, and it's for your health. It's for your body. And because if you push too hard, too much at that last moment, there's going to be tearing for your body, and it's going to take a little bit longer to recover. But nonetheless, you know, baby came out super healthy, and everything worked out great. My wife's phenomenal. She did an excellent job. And in the end, like, I know that I did a good job coaching. I know, because I was intentional, because I was active, because I was listening. And, you know, it helped that it's a second child. It helped that I had some Bradley training. But some of you, it's your first child. You don't get to do Bradley training, but you at least get this video. Go watch a few other videos if you can. All right, be involved. I know that I did well. I did a good job for my wife, and like, that feels right. And I started out this little person's life, our daughter's life, I started it out as a dad doing well, doing a good job. You want that feeling as a dad. You want to know that you started right, that when the moment was most critical and this baby's coming into the world, you knew what was going on, you were paying attention, you were listening to the doctors, you were paying attention to your wife, you were coaching her appropriately, and you were doing just the right amount to help. It matters. It really matters. And she will remember for the rest of your life. And you know what? Your child's going to learn about it too. When they get old enough, mom's going to tell them. Mom's going to tell them your dad did a good job. I'm trying to wonder, like, how do I finish this up? First of all, thank you for watching. And honestly, like, if you feel like you've benefited from this video at all, man, hit that like button, share it, okay? Because there's a couple out there, and maybe you don't even know who's getting ready to give birth. Like, throw this video up on Facebook, like, put it out there, let people watch it. There are not many videos by men for men to help with this labor and delivery process. But right now, especially during COVID-19, the husband, the man is so important. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't afford a $1,400 doula. I don't know about you guys, but I want to be there for my wife, for my baby. I want to be a part of this process. And I hope that's your story. I want that to be your story. Thanks for watching this video. Hit like, hit share, hit subscribe. I hope you benefited from everything that I shared with you. Hit me up in the comments if you have questions. I'm sure there's a lot that I haven't explained yet. I'm happy to answer your questions. I love questions. Put them down there in the comments. And if you want to see the video of when Brielle came home from the hospital, I'm going to throw it up in the card. Check out that link and you can see her coming home from the hospital. It was amazing. Thank you and God bless you.